Cadet Kate Mitchell felt the artificial gravity of the transport ship fade as the docking clamps engaged with Galactic Military Academy. Through the small porthole, she could see the massive station stretching out like a metal city in space. This was it. 3 years of preparation, endless physical tests, and more paperwork than she thought possible had led to this moment. The transport doors hissed open, and Kate stepped into the main corridor of the academy. The first thing that hit her was how small she felt. Back on Earth, her 5 feet 4 inches frame had been perfectly average. Here, surrounded by alien cadets, she might as well have been a child. A group of Vorthan cadets walked past, their thick blue skin gleaming under the station's lights. Each one stood at least 7 feet tall, with arms that looked like they could crush steel. They glanced down at her with what she could only describe as amusement, chattering in their clicking language before moving on. Kate adjusted her standard-issue duffel bag and followed the flow of new arrivals toward the registration area. The diversity of species was overwhelming. She saw cadets with 4 arms, others with scales that shifted color, and some that seemed to be made of living rock. All of them looked built for war in ways that humans simply weren't. Another Deathworlder, she heard someone say in Galactic Standard. Kate's translator implant picked up the words clearly. She turned to see a tall, insect-like being with multiple eyes studying her. This had to be one of the Thek species she'd read about. They keep sending these soft ones. I don't understand why the Academy bothers. His companion, a creature that looked like a cross between a bear and a lizard, made a sound that might have been laughter. Earth is rated Class 12. Most dangerous planet in the known galaxy, supposedly. Look at her, though. No claws, no natural armor, no poison glands. What kind of predator evolution produces something so weak? Kate kept walking, pretending she hadn't heard. She dealt with this kind of attitude during her preliminary training on Luna Station. Most aliens couldn't understand how humans had survived on what they called a death world, when they looked so fragile compared to other species from similar planets. The registration line moved slowly. Kate found herself standing behind a Craxi warrior whose shoulder spikes nearly scraped the ceiling. In front of the Craxi was a being she didn't recognize, covered in what looked like natural metal plating. Everyone around her seemed designed by evolution to kill and survive. Everyone except her. You must be the new human, a voice said behind her. Kate turned to see another cadet approaching. This one was clearly reptilian, with green scales and yellow eyes that seemed to track every movement. I'm Vex Han of the Soren Defense Corps. You're the third of your kind to make it this far. Kate nodded. Kate Mitchell, Earth Defense Force. Well, former EDF. I suppose I'm Academy now. Vex Han's head tilted in what might have been curiosity. Yes, I've heard about the previous 2. One washed out during basic combat training. The other transferred to communications after an incident in the survival course. His eyes narrowed slightly. Tell me, how does someone from a Class 12 Death World look so unimpressive? Before Kate could answer, another figure approached. This one was massive even by station standards, easily 8 feet tall with a chitinous exoskeleton that looked like it could stop artillery rounds. The creature's multiple eyes focused on Kate with unmistakable disdain. This is Crix, Vexon said, gesturing to the newcomer. We're part of what the Academy calls a Predator Pack, the elite combat specialists from various warrior species. He looked Kate up and down again. We were curious to meet the famous Deathworlder. Crix made a sound that her translator couldn't quite process, but the meaning was clear enough. Whatever he'd said, it wasn't complimentary. Your planet's reputation precedes you, Vexon continued. Class 12 Deathworld, birthplace of apex predators, hostile environment that would kill most species within hours. Yet here you stand, looking like a strong breeze might knock you over. It's quite the puzzle. Kate felt her jaw tighten but kept her voice steady. Maybe you shouldn't judge by appearances. Perhaps not, Vexon agreed, though his tone suggested he wasn't convinced. Still, combat training begins tomorrow. We'll see what Earth's finest has to offer. He gestured to Crix, and both aliens moved away, joining a group of similarly intimidating cadets near the registration desk. Kate watched them go, noting how other cadets seemed to give the group a wide berth. The Predator Pack, Vexon had called them. She could see why. Every member looked like they'd been born to fight and kill. As the line moved forward and Kate finally reached the registration desk, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was about to prove something to everyone here. The question was whether that something would be humanity's strength or its weakness. She just hoped she wouldn't disappoint her entire species in the process. The first week of combat training at Galactic Military Academy was designed to break cadets. Kate Mitchell had read about it in her preparation files, but experiencing it was something else entirely. The training deck was a massive space filled with obstacle courses, sparring rings, and endurance equipment that looked like it belonged in a medieval torture chamber. "Attention, maggots!" Drill Instructor Thane bellowed across the training floor. The Corvan warrior stood 9 feet tall, with natural bone armor covering most of his body. His voice could probably shatter glass if he really tried. "Today we separate the warriors from the weaklings. You will run the endurance course until I get tired of watching you suffer." Kate lined up with the other cadets at the starting line. To her left stood a massive Craxie, whose breathing sounded like a steam engine. To her right was a Vorthan female whose muscle mass probably exceeded Kate's entire body weight. Looking around, Kate felt like she was about to race against a collection of living tanks. The buzzer sounded and chaos erupted. The larger alien surged forward with a kind of explosive power that Kate couldn't hope to match. Within seconds, she was trailing behind the pack, watching their impressive forms disappear into the obstacle course ahead. But as the minutes ticked by, something interesting started happening. The thunderous footsteps ahead of her began to slow. Heavy breathing turned into gasping. By the 30-minute mark, Kate found herself passing the first fallen cadet, a Thek warrior who was bent over trying to catch his breath. "Impossible!" she heard him wheeze as she jogged past. How is the soft one still moving? An hour into the exercise, Kate had passed half the class. The Craxie who had started beside her was now sitting on the ground, his massive chest heaving like a broken bellows. The Vorthan female had dropped out 20 minutes earlier, clutching her side and cursing in her native tongue. But Kate kept running. Her legs burned and her lungs felt like they were on fire, but this was nothing compared to the mountain runs she'd done back on Earth. The 10-mile sprints through Death Valley during summer training had been worse than this climate-controlled environment. What kind of death world training did they put her through? She heard another cadet mutter as she passed. By the time Instructor Thane finally called a halt, only Kate and 3 other cadets were still moving. The rest of the class was scattered across the course in various states of exhaustion. Kate came to a stop at the finish line, breathing hard but still standing upright. "Interesting," Thane rumbled, his bone-covered face showing what might have been surprise. "The small predator has endurance. Most unusual for something so fragile-looking." The real shock came during sparring practice 2 days later. Kate had been paired with Gorak, a Thokrian warrior whose exoskeleton looked like natural battle armor. The Thokrians were known throughout the galaxy for their defensive capabilities. Their shells could supposedly stop small arms fire. "Try not to hurt yourself on my armor, little Deathworlder," Gorak said as they faced off in the sparring ring. His mandibles clicked in what Kate assumed was amusement. Kate had been holding back during previous sparring sessions, worried about hurting her opponents despite their obvious physical advantages. But Gorak's condescending attitude sparked something in her that she'd been trying to keep under control since arriving at the academy. When the match began, Gorak came at her with typical Thokrian tactics, using his natural armor to absorb hits while trying to overwhelm her with brute force. Kate dodged his first few attacks, studying his movement patterns. Then she saw her opening. Instead of trying to punch through his armor like most opponents would, Kate struck at the joints where the exoskeleton plates met. Her fist connected with the soft tissue between Gorak's shoulder plates with a precision that surprised even her. The crack was audible across the entire training deck. Gorak's scream of pain echoed off the walls as his left arm went limp. The supposedly unbreakable exoskeleton had split along stress lines that Kate had identified in seconds. Medical drones rushed onto the sparring mat as Gorak collapsed, clutching his shattered shoulder. The training deck fell silent. Every cadet, every instructor, every maintenance worker stopped what they were doing to stare at the small human standing over the fallen Thokrian warrior. "Impossible," someone whispered. "No one breaks Thokrian armor with bare hands." From across the training deck, Kate heard slow, deliberate clapping. She looked up to see Vexon and his predator pack approaching the sparring ring. The reptilian warrior's yellow eyes glowed with something that might have been respect, but felt more like predatory interest. "Very impressive, little Deathworlder," Vexon said as he reached the edge of the mat. "Perhaps we underestimated you." Crix, the massive insectoid, made that untranslatable sound again, but this time it carried a different tone. The other members of the Predator pack were studying Kate with a kind of attention usually reserved for dangerous weapons. "I have a proposition for you," Vexon continued, his scaled lips pulling back to reveal rows of sharp teeth. "The Predator pack has certain traditions for testing new members. Would you be interested in proving that your little display here wasn't just luck?" Kate looked around the training deck, noting how every alien was watching her response. She could feel the weight of representing her entire species in this moment. "What kind of test?" she asked. "The simulation chambers," Vexon replied. "A hunting scenario designed to push apex predators to their limits. Most cadets don't survive their first attempt." His smile widened. "But then again, you're from a class 12 Deathworld. Surely you can handle a little artificial danger." The simulation chamber doors sealed behind them with a finality that made Kate's stomach tighten. She found herself standing in what looked like an alien jungle, complete with twisted trees that seemed to reach toward a blood-red sky. The air was thick and humid, carrying scents she couldn't identify, but that made every instinct in her body scream danger. "Welcome to Zirian 7, Vexon announced, his scales already shifting to match the jungle's model colors. "Home to some of the most efficient killers in known space. The simulation runs for 6 hours. Survive, and you earn our respect. Fail and—" He gestured to the neural interface crown each of them wore. "Well, the pain inhibitors are set to minimum. You'll feel everything." Crix's chitinous armor gleamed as he flexed his natural weapons, razor-sharp claws extending from his forearms. The other pack members were similarly equipped. Razor, a Corvin berserker, cracked his bow and knuckles with sounds like breaking timber. Fong, whose species Kate didn't recognize, tested the venom glands in his wrists. Kate looked down at her standard academy training gear and felt absurdly underdressed for this party. "The prey becomes a hunter here," Vexon continued. "Zirian 7's ecosystem revolves around one simple rule: kill or be killed. The simulation will throw predators at us in waves, each more dangerous than the last." His yellow eyes fixed on Kate. "Try to keep up, little Deathworlder." The first attack came within minutes. A pack of creatures that looked like 6-legged wolves with metallic fangs burst from the undergrowth. The predator pack responded exactly as Kate expected, meeting violence with violence. Vexon's claws tore through the nearest beast while Crix's armor deflected attacks that would have killed most species. But while they fought, Kate was already moving. She grabbed a fallen branch, tested its weight, then used her boot knife to sharpen one end into a crude spear. As the pack finished off the wolf creatures, she was busy stripping fibrous bark from nearby trees. "What is she doing?" Razor muttered, watching Kate weave the bark into cordage. "Making rope?" Kate replied without looking up. "You'll need it." The second wave brought flying predators with wingspans wider than Kate was tall. Acid dripped from their talons, hissing where it hit the jungle floor. The pack roared challenges and leaped into the air, trying to bring the creatures down through sheer aggression. Kate took a different approach. She'd been studying the creatures' flight patterns, noting how they dove and climbed. Instead of fighting them head-on, she used her makeshift rope to create snares between the trees. When the aerial predators dove for their next attack, they flew straight into her traps. "Impossible!" Fong hissed as he watched the creature 3 times his size crash to the ground, wings tangled in Kate's snares. "How did you know they would fly that pattern?" "Same way birds back home hunt," Kate said, already setting up her next trap. "Predators are predictable if you know what to look for." By the 4th wave, the pack had stopped fighting and started watching. Kate moved through the jungle like she belonged there, reading signs that the others couldn't see, setting traps in places that made no sense until predators walked straight into them. She turned the jungle itself into a weapon, using the environment in ways that left her alien companions speechless. The final test came in the form of a Zirian Alpha, a creature that stood 12 feet tall and looked like it had been designed by nightmares. Its hide was thick enough to stop energy weapons, and its claws could tear through starship hull plating. It was the kind of apex predator that had driven entire civilizations to extinction. The pack charged it directly, as Kate had known they would. Their attacks barely scratched its armored hide, and within seconds they were scattered and bleeding, forced to retreat behind whatever cover they could find. Kate, meanwhile, had been following the creature for the past hour, staying downwind and noting its behavior. She'd seen how it favored its left leg, noticed the old scar tissue around its right eye that suggested partial blindness, observed how it paused to scent the air every 30 seconds. When the alpha cornered the pack against a cliff face, Kate made her move, but instead of attacking, she began to run. Not away from the creature, but parallel to it, always staying just out of reach. The alpha, enraged by the small prey that refused to die, followed. For the next 2 hours, Kate led the creature on a chase through every trap, every hazard, every dangerous part of the jungle she'd cataloged during their hunt. She ran it past poisonous plants that released spores when disturbed, over unstable ground that collapsed under its massive weight, through territories of other predators that attacked anything that entered their domain. By the time she finally allowed the alpha to corner her, the creature was exhausted, poisoned, wounded, and completely disoriented. Kate's final strike, a precise thrust with her improvised spear into the weak point behind the creature's skull, was almost anticlimactic. The simulation ended with Kate standing over the fallen alpha, not even breathing hard. The predator pack stared at her in absolute silence. "How?" Vexon finally whispered. Kate pulled her spear free and looked at each of them in turn. On Earth, we call persistence hunting. My ancestors used to chase mammoths until they died of exhaustion. Compared to that, this was easy. The aftermath of the simulation left the predator pack in an uncomfortable silence. They sat in the Academy's research library, supposedly reviewing combat footage, but Kate could feel their eyes on her every time she moved. The way they watched her now was different from before. It wasn't dismissive anymore. It was a way prey animals watch something dangerous. "I need to understand," Vexon finally said, breaking the tension. His reptilian features were tight with confusion. "What we saw and there shouldn't be possible. You're not built for hunting. No claws, no armor, no venom, no enhanced strength. Yet you took down an alpha that could kill any of us." Kate looked up from the tactical manual she'd been reading. "Would you like me to explain, or would you prefer to figure out yourselves?" "Explain," Crix clicked, his compound eyes fixed on her with unsettling intensity. Kate closed her book and leaned back in her chair. "First, you need to understand something about Earth. When your people classify as a class, 12 Deathworld, they're not exaggerating. Everything on my planet is designed to kill everything else. The weather tries to kill you. The plants try to kill you. The animals definitely try to kill you. Even the bacteria want you dead." She stood up and walked to the library's main terminal. "Computer, access Earth biological records. Display human evolutionary history." The holographic display that materialized above the table made the predator pack collectively inhale sharply. It showed a timeline stretching back millions of years. But what caught their attention were the creatures that early humans had hunted. Massive beasts that dwarfed anything they'd faced in the simulation. Woolly mammoths, Kate said, pointing to one of the larger creatures. 15 feet tall, weighing 8 tons. Covered in thick hide and armed with tusks that could impale a hover tank. My ancestors hunted them with pointed sticks and rocks. Fong's forked tongue flicked out nervously. "Impossible. How does something so small kill something so large?" Kate smiled, and for the first time since meeting her, the pack members felt genuinely afraid of that expression. "We ran them to death." She manipulated the display to show a map of ancient migration patterns. "See these tracking routes? Some of them stretch for hundreds of miles. When early humans found prey, they didn't fight it. They followed it. For days, sometimes weeks. But that's..." Razor's bone armor creaked as he shifted uncomfortably. "That's not how predation works. You strike fast, you kill, you feed. You don't chase prey across continents. That's how your predation works." Kate corrected. "Human predation is different. We're endurance hunters. We don't need to be faster than our prey. We just need to outlast it." She pulled up another display showing human physiology. Look at this. Humans can regulate their body temperature through sweating. We're the only species in the galaxy that can cool ourselves while running. Every other creature has to stop and pant to avoid overheating. But we can just keep going. Vexhan was studying the data with growing horror. Your sweat glands, there are millions of them. You're essentially a walking cooling system. Exactly. When we chase something, we're not trying to catch it right away. We're waiting for it to overheat and collapse from exhaustion. Then, when it's too tired to fight back, we kill it. Kate's voice was matter-of-fact, but the words sent chills through her audience. Crix's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. But the psychological aspect, how do you maintain focus for such extended periods? Most predators lose interest after a failed attack. Kate pulled up records of human persistence hunting techniques. Because we don't see it as a failed attack. We see it as a successful track. Every step our prey takes, we follow. Every place it rests, we note. Every sign of weakness, we catalog. We turn hunting into a science. The display showed footage from Earth's historical records. Humans tracking animals across vast landscapes, never giving up, never losing the trail. The prey animals looked increasingly desperate as the hours passed, while the human hunters remained focused and determined. Your species has a phrase for this. Kate continued, accessing galactic linguistic databases. The relentless pursuit. Most civilizations use it to describe machines or AI systems. Humans are the only biological species that naturally exhibits this behavior. She turned back to face the pack directly. When my ancestors encountered a mammoth, they didn't see a dangerous animal that might kill them. They saw 8 tons of meat that would feed the tribe for weeks. The mammoth size and strength weren't obstacles to overcome. They were just factors to account for in the hunting plan. Vexhan's scales had turned a pale shade that Kate had never seen before. You're describing calculated predation. Psychological warfare. That's not natural hunting behavior. That's terrifying. Kate suggested helpfully. The silence that followed was broken only by the hum of the library's air recycling system. Finally, Razor spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. How many species did humans hunt to extinction? Kate checked the records one more time. On Earth? Most of them. Once humans developed persistence hunting techniques, megafauna started disappearing wherever we spread. Mammoths, giant ground sloths, saber-toothed cats, cave bears. If it was big enough to be worth hunting, we hunted it until there weren't any left. She looked at each of them in turn. That's what Earth is really like. It's not just a death world because it's dangerous. It's a death world because we made it that way. The change in the predator pack's behavior toward Kate was immediate and unmistakable. The next morning during combat training, when Vexhan approached her station, he did something that sent shockwaves through the entire training deck. The reptilian warrior, who had never bowed to anyone except superior officers, lowered his head in a gesture of submission. Pack leader, he said quietly, using a title that no cadet had ever been given before. Kate stared at him for a moment, then looked around at the other pack members. Crix had positioned himself slightly behind and to her left, the traditional bodyguard stance of his species. Razor stood at attention, his bone armor gleaming under the training deck lights. Fong kept his head lowered, avoiding direct eye contact in a show of deference that was completely unprecedented. "What are you doing?" Kate asked, genuinely confused by the sudden shift. Acknowledging reality, Vexhan replied, "We are apex predators from our respective worlds. Warriors bred for combat across generations. Yet you demonstrated hunting skills that surpass all of us combined." He straightened up, but his posture remained respectful. A true predator recognizes a superior hunter when they encounter one. The conversation was overheard by nearby cadets, and within hours, word had spread throughout the academy like wildfire. The story grew with each telling, as stories do, but the core truth remained unchanged. The small human from the death world had somehow made the academy's most feared fighter submit to her leadership. By the end of the week, Kate found herself at the center of attention she'd never wanted. Cadets from dozens of species would stop their conversations when she walked by, watching her with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. Some looked at her like she was a puzzle they desperately wanted to solve. Others looked at her like she was a weapon they hoped never to face in combat. The real change came during advanced tactics class. Professor Kent, a veteran Thek warrior with more battle scars and unmarked carapace, was discussing traditional assault strategies when a Vorthan cadet raised his hand. "Sir, what about persistent hunting? The human approach?" Professor Kenta's mandibles clicked in annoyance. Persistence hunting is not a recognized military tactic. It's a primitive behavior observed in certain Deathworld species. With respect, sir, the Vorthan continued, glancing at Kate. Cadet Mitchell's demonstration in the simulation chamber suggests otherwise. Her methods were more effective than traditional apex predator tactics. The classroom fell silent. All eyes turned to Kate, who suddenly found herself in the uncomfortable position of being asked to defend her entire species' approach to conflict. "Stand up, Cadet Mitchell," Professor Kent said, his tone suggesting this was more challenge than request. "Since your methods seem to have impressed your classmates, perhaps you'd like to share your insights with the class." Kate rose slowly, feeling the weight of dozens of alien eyes upon her. "The difference isn't in the tactics themselves," she began, choosing her words carefully. "It's in the philosophy behind them." She moved to the front of the classroom, her mind racing. Most military strategies are based on the idea of decisive engagement. You locate the enemy, you engage with superior force, you achieve victory quickly. It's efficient and it works well for most scenarios. But, Professor Kent prompted, "But it assumes your enemy will fight by the same rules," Kate continued. "What happens when they don't? What happens when your enemy refuses to engage in decisive battle? When they retreat, regroup, and force you into a prolonged conflict?" A Craxi cadet near the back raised his hand. "You pursue them with superior speed and firepower." Kate shook her head. "What if you can't? What if they're faster than you, or they know the terrain better, or they have better technology? Traditional tactics tell you to either find a different approach or withdraw. But there's a third option, which is..." Professor Kent asked, and Kate could hear genuine curiosity in his voice now. "You outlast them." Kate turned to face the class directly. "Every enemy has limitations. Fuel supplies, ammunition, food, water, morale. Instead of trying to overcome their strengths, you wait for their weaknesses to become critical. You don't need to be stronger or faster if you can simply endure longer than they can." She pulled up the classroom's holographic display and showed a map of a hypothetical battlefield. Human military doctrine isn't about winning fights. It's about winning wars. We've learned that the side that gives up first loses, regardless of their initial advantages. Vexon spoke up from his seat in the middle of the classroom. "Cadet Mitchell is describing psychological warfare as much as military strategy. The enemy knows you're still out there, still tracking them, still following no matter where they go or how long they run. Eventually, that knowledge becomes more dangerous than any weapon." Kate nodded. "Exactly. It's not just about physical endurance. It's about mental endurance. The willingness to continue pursuing an objective long after any reasonable being would have given up. Humans call it determination, but other species might have different words for it." Professor Kenta's compound eyes studied her for a long moment. "And this approach has proven successful in human military history?" "Every major conflict in human history has been decided by which side could endure the longest," Kate replied. "Superior technology, better tactics, larger armies, none of those matter if you give up first." The classroom was completely silent now. Kate could see the alien cadets processing this information, try to reconcile their understanding of warfare with what she was describing. "The most terrifying thing about humans," she continued, "isn't that we're particularly strong or fast or smart. It's that we don't know when to quit. Even when quitting would be the logical choice, we keep going. That's what makes us dangerous."